So you continue to drop albums because Streets of New York was on your second album?
Streets of New York was on the second album, Wanted That Alive.
Yeah. Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite G Rap songs. You know, and then what, Ill Street Blues, that was the second album too?
That was the third album.
Third album, right. Because you continue to sort of drop important songs.
Right.
Album after album.
I mean, I had to. I mean, if I didn't, it wouldn't have made no sense to keep doing it.
Yeah. And you know, it kept elevating, I feel. Like, you know, it's like the production started to get what I felt like cleaner and so forth. Now
Started to mature.
Wasn't Large Professor producing for you as well?
Large Professor did the second album. He did the whole second album.
There you go. Okay. My memory serves correct then. Right. So he did Streets of New York, yeah.
The whole album.
You could definitely hear that influence.
Right.
Now, on the first album, it was what? Marley Marl did the production?
Marley Marl did the production. I mean, I had a lot to do with the production.
Okay. And was Polo doing the production as well or no?
Who?
Polo,
I think Polo did the production for It's a Demo with Marley. I think it was Polo's idea to use the James Brown sample, and then Marley put it together.
Right.
And then after that, pretty much like the whole Road to the Riches album was me bringing the records to Marley, telling Marley, yo, put this with that, put that with this loop over that loop. You know what I mean? It was certain artists in the Juice Crew that came with their own ideas already, as far as production-wise, everything. Yeah. Me, Kane, and Biz was the artists that, the whole thing wasn't just left up to Marley.
Yeah. So why did you kind of switch gears on your second album and go with Large Professor?
Because I just heard some fire that Large Professor was doing. You know, I was like, y'all, I need to get tracks from that kid right there, yo. Large Professor was with a group back there. I forgot the name of the group, but I think it was Large Professor, like two other brothers.
Main Source.
Main Source, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, but Large Professor was part of Main Source with two other DJs.
Right. And every track I heard with Main Source, I'm like, yo, whoever doing the beats for them, yo, is a maniac. You know what I'm saying? The beats was crazy to me. And then I found out, I think he did some stuff for Rakim and all that. And that's how I first that's how I was able to gain a connection to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you guys made magic together.
Yep, exactly.
So, at what point did you end up meeting Nas? Because Nas and Large Professor were real close.
When I was working on my second album with Large Professor, he was telling me about a young kid from Queensbridge that's like bananas. You know what I'm saying? He was like, yo, G, like, yo, this young kid, yo, he go crazy hard. He remind me of you and all that. I was like, word? And then eventually I ended up meeting Nas. You know what I mean? Everything was what Large Professor said. You know, like Nas was he showed a lot of promise. Young kid that showed a lot of promise, and I wanted to work with him. I wanted to make sure he get himself out there and known to the world.
Okay, because a lot of people influence other artists.
Right.
But when you talk about Nas, most people would say that Kool G Rap was the biggest influence on Nas in terms of rhyme style and so forth. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I couldn't tell you better than Nas could tell you, but I mean, yeah, as far as hearing the influence and everything, I do hear a lot of influence. But then again, I hear the influence of Rakim in them. You know what I'm saying? I hear that too. I hear that side of Nas. As well as I hear the influence of G Rap.
I I would say more G Rap than Rakim. I mean, now that I really think about it, I would say more G Rap than Rakim. That's me saying it.
No doubt. I mean, depends on like what album, what stage in his career. You know what I mean? Like, would you say like in the very beginning, like
Yeah,
very first album and everything?
Illmatic Nas definitely had a lot more G Rap. Okay, so you meet Nas, and do you pick up the influences right away when you first hear him rap?
I hear some influences, no, but at this time he's nice, but Nas still didn't develop fully into what he would become shortly after. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
He's still nasty Nas back then.
but right, he's still nasty Nas and he's nice. Don't get me wrong. You know, he's like a young gunner at this point. But
Okay,
what he would become later on is like an undeniable legend. You know what I mean?
right. So I had heard that you were trying to set up meetings with Lyor Cohen and Kevin Liles to bring Nas, I guess, to Def Jam.
I ain't try to set up meetings. I set up meetings with them.
Okay.
You know, I actually bought a demo tape I had on Nas. You know, I had him, recording some songs in my house and all that. And I had bought some songs. I played it for him, and they was like, "Yeah, G, he's good, but he sounds a little too much like a G Rap." You know what I'm saying? But to me, I heard that, like I said, I understand it was I might have been an influence on Nas, but I heard his own originality as well. You know what I mean? So maybe I might have heard something they didn't hear at that point. But I know they had to regret that later.
Right. So Lyor Cohen and Kevin Liles both told you to your face that Nas sounds too much like you and we're going to pass.
Yeah. They told me to my face, he sounds too much like a G-Rap.
That's crazy. Right, because then Akinelli was running around with Nas as well and taking him to different labels. And I had heard that like Russell Simmons had passed as well. I don't know if that was, it was the G-Rap reason, but he had passed as well on Nas.
I don't think it was a G-Rap reason, but I didn't know Akinelli took him to Russell. But that's crazy. So the whole Def Jam pretty much passed on him.
Right, and he eventually signed with Columbia.
Cause Church had came to my house one night when Nas was there, and I was telling Serch like, "Yo, the young kid right here, yo, he's busy. He get busy." I'm telling them all, and then I play some stuff that Nas had recorded in the house, cause we all sitting there. I was in a condominium then, and I had made a studio out of one of the rooms. So we all sitting in the room with the studio in it, and I started playing on what we just had recorded Nas on, and Serch just went crazy. Like, he went crazy, and they exchanged map and and all that. Me, in turn, I just went out shortly after that. I just went out to Cali to go record an album with Sir Jinx, and then at time, Nas and Serch linked up, and that's when they did what they did, and made that happen.
Right, because Serch is, I guess, signed Nas to his production company, and then he took, which is, I guess, Searchlight, and he took Nas to Columbia, and then Nas got his deal through Serch.
Exactly.
And then Nas also showed up on, I guess, Back to the Grill Again on Serch's solo album.
Right.
And then, once Illmatic dropped, then it was
over
through the roof. I mean, when you first heard Illmatic, what did you think?
I mean, I wasn't surprised, but it was still like mind blowing to hear the finished product and what he did with that. You know what I'm saying? Nas was just like phenomenal. He was that new sensation.
Yeah, and he was, I feel, the first rapper to sort of incorporate every hot producer on his album. Whereas, we talked about how, Marley did your whole first album, and then, Large Professor did your whole second album. Whereas Nas had Large Professor, but he also had Pete Rock. He also had
Premier.
Q-Tip, Premier. he had all the hot New York dudes, you know, giving them, you know, his best, you know, their best tracks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was smart.
Yeah. And then you eventually ended up doing a song with Nas, which is Fast Life.
Yep.
Was that the only song you guys did together?
Uh, we also did. He was also on another Holla Back. Me, him, and Az. Another track I did called Holla Back.
Okay.
I want to say it was on the G and Connor Story album, but I'm not sure. It might have been one of the records that didn't go on the G and Connor Story, because by the time when the album came out, it had switched companies. Like, it was, when I recorded it, it was being recorded for Raucous Records. But then at this time, you know, the album was being released on Koch Records.
Right. Right. I think what's so dope about Fast Life is that you do a verse, Nas does a verse, but then on the third verse, you guys start going back and forth.
Right.
You know, which was dope. And I assume based on that, you guys were in the studio together doing that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we was right there mixing it up, you know what I'm saying, exchanging energy and all that. Yeah, we was right there in the same studio. Couldn't have been done no other way.
Yeah, so you guys were essentially competing against each other in that last verse.
Yeah, you know, like good, friendly, fun competition, you know?